Welcome back to Pentester Diaries. In this episode, Jon Helmus talks with Joan Bono, a longtime Cobalt Core pentester. They will take a look at understanding pentest severity ratings. Let's dive in.
Welcome, everyone, to Pentester Diaries, the podcast series provided by Cobalt.io. I'm your host, Jon Helmus, and this week we're interviewing Joan Bono. Joan, welcome to the show.
Well, hi, thank you for inviting me.
You're most certainly welcome, sir. So Joan is a expertise in various types of methodologies within pen testing. He's one of the top members within the Cobalt Core community. This week, we're going to be talking about how we can actually understand pen test severity findings and the ratings that go with them. So, before we kick off into the context of the episode and the details that we're going to be talking about, Joan, it'd be really great for you to talk a little bit about yourself, your background, and then any, insights you want the listeners to know about you.
Well, then not much to say about me. My name is Joan. I'm from Spain. I'm working in security for 6 years now, like making money out of it. And I live in Prague because I like the cold climate we have here. That's pretty much it.
Awesome. I too like the cold climate. I live in the Pacific Northwest, where it's typically cold for the most part. So awesome. So to start setting the stage for the conversation is, we know what a CVSS score is, right? And like what makes up that CVSS score, because we use that essentially has like a matrix kind of framework of how we assign severities to these findings that we find within, the targeted organizations that we're pen testing. However, we do want to make sure that we ensure that we translate it to the audience on what it is that, a CVSS score is. So, could you kind of elaborate on what a CVSS score is and what makes up the score itself?
So CVSS, it's an open framework we use during our test to categorize the vulnerabilities. Basically, it's what we use to assign a severity level. So that it's what the client then see when you see a vulnerability is rated high or medium or low, or this small number you see after the severity, when sometimes you see like WebLogic issue 9.8 CVSS score. So that's the score we use in the calculator.
Gotcha. Yeah. So like you're saying, like you can go and you can actually pull the CVSS score, from a designated area. So like you can actually go on like NIST and actually go and find the calculator. Do you think you could, based on that, right? We find a CVSS score associated with a vulnerability that we were able to exploit. Sometimes it can vary a little bit in severity ratings. But before we dive into that specific topic, can you talk more of like maybe walking through an example of how you would compare different scenarios for the CVSSs you find? So like, meaning like if you find an RCE and a SQL injection, how do you rate those, and how do you contrast them differently based on like a production or a test system?
Well, basically, it's more based on the personal experience, no? But for example, when you see a SQL injection or remote code execution, you automatically think about it as a high. But it depends also, as you were mentioning, on the environment and in the business. From the business perspective, for example, you can get, just imagine you have an SQL injection and you can get information from a database which just contains the name of products on a website. So maybe you consider that as a high because, it's an injection. It's an SQL injection and it's serious. But that from the client perspective, they could say, this is not a high severity issue. We don't need to fix that as soon as, for example, reflected cross-site scripting affecting the final user, the customers of this application. Because it's an injection, but you only can get the names of the products, which basically navigating on the website, you can get them.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, I know as a pen tester myself, it's also alongside of like, is it a production system? Is this a system that is, generating revenue for the client or the organization, whatever the target is? What is the value of that asset, right? And what is the value of that asset towards the organization? You have to kind of mimic the severity based on that, along with the CVSS score. And you mentioned it like too with like SQL injection. Like, yes, SQL injection is high, but what kind of information are you able to pull from it? And I mean, a junior pen tester might say, "Oh, I found SQLI," and just immediately slap a critical to it. And after actually evaluating it, you'll be like, "Well, no, you were only able to pull an arbitrary table that didn't have any proprietary information in it. So we're actually going to need to bring that down a little bit to, like a high, right? Because you still have that injection point there, which is not good. Because I think as a pen tester that's worked with software developers, to me that says, okay, there's a development issue there or gap there where they don't they're not understanding how to properly secure the website or how they're writing the code. So it still needs to be a high because it needs to be evaluated as such. However, while we're on the topic, you had mentioned like the severity of the systems, the impact that those systems have. What about, in your own experience, I'd love to know is what about the availability? As a pen tester myself, I've found, instances where there was, I don't know, like 20 instances of cross-site scripting on a client's organization or on their website, right? And to say, okay, well, I'm going to slap a critical on this, that's going to give you little to no time to fix it. How would you associate that, where it's like, okay, you found a large amount of a certain critical finding, such as XSS or injection, it doesn't really matter, but that the bandwidth, the amount of people to fix that isn't there. How would you, as a professional pen tester, go about evaluating that?
Well, basically, depending on the information extracted from the databases, for example, if they have just one developer and the issue could affect the customers, I mean, we cannot decrease the severity of that just because they don't have the capacity of cover all these issues. So in this case, I've seen companies just shutting down an entire platform just because of that. And I'm talking about a platform, about this platform the companies are using just to put how many hours you are working. Like every employee just logs in this page, and then they developed a system in which you just put there how many hours you're working on each project. I've seen that company just shutting down their own platform, and no one was able to get to write how many hours they were working for that week. Just because of that, they knew that they were not able to get that fixed, and that page was exposed to the internet. And in using that injection, it was possible not to write to the database, but just you were able to see the values for each user, how many hours, names of the project, and that's sensitive information. So the company needs to evaluate, especially if it's a company which works with medical data or some. You have address or client contacts or company names, and yeah, of course, you don't want that to affect you, because otherwise, if you say like, wait, this affects our business, yes, because we have that injection, and if we don't have our employees to note how many hours they are working on each project, we don't know exactly how to change that. But our clients, the clients of this company, well, I don't think they want to be exposed that way just because you are providing services to this company, and then you have a vulnerability and you're exposing their data. So that's something that internally, depending on the business impact, they have to evaluate. Okay, what do we prefer? To just have more work next week, asking our employees to write down how many hours they work on each project, or to lose our customers just because we have an injection and we can have exposed their names, how much we pay to them, how much money we get from them, which is the main point of contact of that company for us. So that's something they have to evaluate. But based on that, based on the capacity to remediate an issue, we cannot lower an issue. What we can do, for example, in this case, we are talking about some serious vulnerability, but in just move it the other way around. When you're doing a pen test, just imagine you have 10 low severity issues, for example, and just one medium. And in the low severity issues, you have SSL and TLS misconfigurations, or some headers missing, or some JavaScript library outdated, jQuery outdated, for example. Okay, in this case, you can just increase the severity for one of the low, the one you consider like it's low, but it's the highest one in the lowest. I don't know if you know what I mean. Like in the lower, you have a range for the low severity issues. So the highest one there. So you say, okay, maybe I can increase this a little bit because this is more important than the other one, the others, and maybe this is an easy fix. So this could be fixed really easy. So, and they just have one medium. So let's put two mediums to make sure they will take a look on this one and they will fix this one. Because sometimes clients, when they see, they don't care about the low severity issues. So they basically focus on the high and medium, and they forget completely about the low severity ones. And I mean, it's, of course, the highest severity, the most important to fix. And I mean, you have to put more effort fixing the high severity issues than the medium or the low, but still, you have severities there, which right now are low, but maybe in the future are high severity issues or medium.
Yeah, no, 100%. And, you know, with all that being said, I think like really to funnel that all into one thing is you have to make sure that you really translate the severity of whatever it is, and like, hey, like, yes, it's going to be a little extra work, but you know, you mentioned like you might have to bring it down, and you know, when we sometimes, I think as pen testers, don't always, you know, aren't thinking about it, that when someone shuts down their website to fix it, they're losing money. And we think about, I think maybe we think about it, but we're not impacted by it, right? That client is impacted by it. But at the same time, like you said, you're having to, you know, communicate that risk to the client, right? And that is critical. I mean, essentially that's what pen testers, that's what we do, is we communicate, and we're professional risk assessors. So, you know, it's crucial that we help our clients understand the risk. You know, aside from helping them understand the risk, is there anything you want to add on to it besides like everything that you just said about like, you know, how you communicate the risk portion to them, but even in like the remediation portion, is there, as a pen tester, how do you help out a client with understanding the risk and also implementing the remediation?
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, it has the same importance. If the client needs to know what's the vulnerability, yes, but also they need to know how it's the remediation, because again, going to the same thing about the low severity issues, sometimes they say they're low, we don't care about these ones, and they really are easy fix, and they are just improving a lot the security. Because, for example, in if you have, for example, the XSS HTTP header missing, that fix, it's just adding one line to the web server configuration, and this can prevent cross-site scripting issues on the for example. And this cross-site scripting can be used to steal user information, to impersonate a user, or causing a denial of service. This, but just by adding one line, you will just make sure you won't have a hike in the future, or at least it would not be that easy to trigger. And yeah, that's the main thing. The calculator just gives you an overview about how's the security of your application or your company or whatever. But it's not like, it's like high, medium, and low. Not we do have to take care of this, and we don't need to take care of this.
Yeah,
that's important to have them to understand also the remediation, the easy remediation for some issues.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. It's yeah, I think it's crucial too, us as pen testers, that we help them along the entire way, right? I think I know in the past I've worked with consulting agencies, and I think any pen testers that are listening in that have worked with consulting agencies, we understand that like there's places where we worked where it's like, nope, you assign it a severity, you send it to them, and then it's out of your hands and it's all in their hands, and you don't ever worry about it anymore, right? And I think it's important as pen testers that we really help them through the remediation process as well. So another question to start, coming to the tail end of the episode is that, we already talked about how does a high go to a low, and you talked about with SQL injection and how, if it contain SQL injection is not great to have. It's like I said, it's if you look at it from a systematic issue level, it's going to be okay. We found this, table, but it doesn't have anything in it, right? It doesn't have anything that's proprietary, sensitive, anything that could really impact any any part of the business, right? It's just it's random data, and you can turn that high into a medium or a low. However, I would love to know your take on how do you take a low severity finding and turn it into a high. And I think that's something that the listeners would really be interested in understanding, because we find lows all the time. Like that happens all the time. So how do you turn that low into a high?
Well, when I've seen this, basically every company has their own guidelines. The security guidelines or some bases they have to cover, like this. Like let's say their security, the company security handbook. Let's say so. For example, for us, TLS or SSL configuration issues, for us it's automatically low, because to exploit a vulnerability of this type, you need to perform a man in the middle and then get the traffic and then decrypt the traffic, and that's really, it's pretty much impossible to do that. I mean, in perfect conditions, everything works and so on, but in real life, it's really complicated. So, for example, in this case, for example, TLS 1.2 was deprecated on March 2020, and during April or May, doing an assessment, there was a company who had this protocol is deprecated. So the same way we are deprecating Telnet, we are deprecating FTP, we are deprecating TLS 1.2 also. So this, which was a low, they asked to increase it as a high because it was a protocol which was deprecated. Sorry, TLS 1.1.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say I thought it was TLS
1.
Yeah,
TLS 1.1, TLS 1.0, and TLS 1.1 are deprecated. So they were using TLS 1.1, and they asked to increase it to high.
Yep. I mean, TLS 1.1 or TLS 1.2. I think aside from the semantics of those, the version is that the takeaway from that is, if yes, the complexity of exploiting that is difficult, right? You have to have a lot of different variables. However, what you like, as you just said, it indicates another larger issue that's outside of the technical realm. It's saying, okay, you're not abiding by your policy, basically, right? You're overstepping the policy. You're not understanding the policy. So there's that systematic issue there. So because of that, it's like, okay, well, you didn't, this was deprecated over a year ago. And you still have it. Why do you still have it? So you need to rank it as a high. And I love that. That's, I think everybody's listening in is going to be like, okay, well, now I didn't realize that. So now we're going to start seeing a lot more high findings. Definitely all over the place, because I think sometimes, and I think I'd love to know your comment on it. I think as we start out as junior pen testers, we really focus on the technical part, and as we mature into the field where we understand that it's not all about the technical portions, right? We have to understand that there's three big pillars that make up the infrastructure. It's the processes, the operations, and the technical procedures, right? So we have to understand that when we're assessing something, whether it's an asset or even a pen tester looking at a policy, we have to take all three of those things into account. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, that's what happens. I mean, when we start, we are of course just focusing on getting remote code execution all the time. That's the only thing that matters. I mean, you just want a Metasploit session open. It's the only thing you're looking for. But when you are just like getting more experience and so on, you just also know that you have to focus also in the low and the medium things, because it's not always about getting a reverse shell. You know that all these things are I mean, another company is paying you to look for this. They want to be secure, and it's not only about having a remote code execution, because maybe they don't have anything like that, and maybe they don't have a database running there, but maybe they have sensitive information exposure. For example, they have a file there inside the, I don't know, inside the config folder, which is allowing listing, and a directory listing is a low severity issue. And then you have a configuration file with all the internal variables. You have the AWS access keys there. You have API keys. You have usernames and passwords. And this low severity stuff is what really matters for the company, because it contains personal information. And that's also important. And you know that because it can cost a lot of money to the company. They don't have a remote code execution, yes, but if they can get a fine for having this personal information exposed there. In Europe, we have this data privacy law, which, I mean, if you are a small company and you have, like, let's say 100 customers, and you get the data exposed, probably you have to close your company, because you are not going to be able to pay the fine. And that's something we have to have in mind. Every pentester, I think, that we are not only looking for the high severity things, we are also looking for the recommendations there, because maybe we are not able to exploit something, but the techniques are evolving every day. Every minute you try a payload which is not valid anymore because Cloudflare is blocking it, but you look on Twitter 1 hour later and probably you have a bypass for that. And that's the thing, and that's something we learn. Every pentest we learn something, but working with the more people you work, the more things you learn, and with the more companies you work, the more things you know, that they are not only worried about the high severity things. That's something important, I think.
Yeah, no, most definitely. Most definitely, man. I think, and like you said, it's a learning experience, right? The only way to understand it is to do it. You don't understand about like how, a perfect example is like how policies work by going on Hack the Box, right? You learn how to do the technical portion, but you might also not necessarily understand like, oh, I'm not able to hit this target because Cloudflare is in front of it. So I need to be able to access it internally or learn the bypass to get past Cloudflare. Because as a junior pen tester, if you see Cloudflare or any kind of like, web application firewall, you're going to try to hit the target that you're assigned, and you're going to see port 80 and 443 open. You're going to be like, oh, that's it. And then you might go to the next thing. That's what I think, sometimes as a junior pen tester, we would see, and has someone who gains experience, you understand, no, this is a WAF. We need to understand that we need to either bypass this, or if we can't bypass this, we need to, be given a bypass to assess the internal portion, right? Because we're still not able to assess that scoped target or target environment. It comes with experience, right? And that's why, experience, plays such a key part in becoming and being a pen tester. And I think, that's why it's crucial for junior pen testers to understand that if you're having trouble finding that gig that you want as a pen tester, or the next level, it's not technical expertise don't play the single part of you being a pen tester. It's also the knowledge of understanding environments, understanding business culture, and understanding the way how just operations within an enterprise essentially work. Because it's in my mind, pen testing has turned into less of like a hack all the things to more of like a mature business process, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how this this field is turned. It's quickly turned into a big business process that helps out organizations and companies mature. And at the end of the day, too, I think something to resonate with our entire conversation is that pen testing isn't all about like, it's not all about getting that shell. It's not all about, getting that SQLI. It's as a pen tester, the thought in your mind should be during the entire engagement and in interaction with the client is, how can I make this client better than they were before? So awesome. So we're wrapping up around time now. So Joan, thanks again, man, for being on Pentester Diaries. Really, really love the conversation. To take away anything from the conversation, what would you advise all the listeners, based on what we talked about today? What would be the key takeaways from this conversation?
Well, I would say, based especially on this last 3, 4, 5 minutes, is that live pentest is not a CTF. Pentest is not OSCP. Pentest is not hack the box. Pentest is also understanding the client requirements and the client needs.
Awesome. Yeah, most definitely, man. It's a business process, everyone. While you got to be a hacker, you also got to be a business person while you do it. So awesome. Well, thanks again, Joan. Thanks for coming on the show. For everyone who has been listening in, the guest today was Joan Bono, and I'm your host, Jon Helmus, and we will catch you on the next episode.
Hi there. Thanks for listening to Pentester Diaries, a podcast brought to you by Cobalt.io. We hope you enjoyed and welcome you to subscribe, share, or leave a review wherever you tune in from. You can catch more episodes by following Cobalt on LinkedIn and Twitter. Stay tuned for more episodes.